just enjoy the game, right? I think if you're passionate and you love something, you're gonna probably put more and more effort and time into it, and you're gonna create a good work ethic. And you could talk about skating and passing and shooting and all this stuff, but at the end of the day, if you're passionate about something, you put your whole heart into it. You're gonna find a way to get improved.
Before we get going here, why don't you just introduce yourself?
So I'm Dave Pszenyczny. I'm 35 years old. Fortunate enough to have played professional hockey for I don't even know how many seasons, but been all around from Phoenix, Arizona to Alaska to Toronto in the American League. Played in Reading, Pennsylvania, Bossier, Shreveport, Louisiana, Kansas City. Well, they were the Missouri Mavericks, and now they're the Kansas City Mavericks. Tulsa Oilers. Brief stint in Indy with the Fuel for training camp. Idaho Steelheads, and then finished up my career in the SPHL for the Peoria Rivermen, and currently right now coaching and director of hockey operations for the Quad City Storm.
I love it. We met back in April of 2019. I got this really cool picture. Maybe I'll pull it up at the end of the podcast here. You and JSD scribbling on a whiteboard, I think at like 12 a.m. Alumni night. So I've had the pleasure of knowing you for the last couple of years, and it's been really cool seeing you as a player for the Mavericks. I used to watch you back in the day. It's cool to see you kind of take the next step after hockey and get into coaching. And I'm like really bullish on the SPHL. I think it's like the best league right now. You have so many guys that played, whether it was Division One, NCAA, or even D3. A lot of guys that played Europe, and it's like one of the best leagues, I think, to catch a good game on any night. Like the parity in the league is so high. You guys have a lot of good skaters. Can you tell me kind of, what it's like to coach, 21-year-olds to probably 30? You have a wide range there.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I'm trying to remember now. I'm 35. So if I could do my major junior math, let's see, my last year would have been like 33 or 34, or maybe even less than that. But no, it's one of those leagues where you get a bunch of good players that just have gotten lost in the shuffle, probably didn't have, the opportunity from when they left college to, crack it. But, we have some gamers, and you see consistently that, there's actually a player in Kansas City right now who I used to love as a coach playing against or coaching against and watching him. And I'm glad that he's now an ECHL player. But, it's one of those leagues where it gets talked bad about. But at the end of the day, most of those players, when they get called up, they impact the game, whether it's, physicality or putting up points or, being a role player. And I think that's where you got to give respect to the coaches in our league, that we tell our players, especially in Quad City, you might be a goal scorer in our league, but you got to be something different possibly at the next level, because one, you're not going to get the power play time. Two, you're, seeing limited ice, but you got to make an impact right away. So what are you willing to do to obviously, stay at that level?
One of the things I've always noticed about the SPHL is usually about halfway through the season when the AHL gets cranking and starts pulling up goalies and guys from teams, that the goalies that maybe have 3 or 4 games in the SP before coming up always play well, in my opinion. Like whatever it is, like you guys do a really good job of getting those players ready to play at the next level when they come up. Obviously, different speed, different change of pace, a lot of better skaters, so the score doesn't always reflect that, but I think my experience with goalies coming up from like Huntsville, like they always play lights out, like for whatever reason. I think, like you said, the guys just get lost in the shuffle, especially if you're a goalie,
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, there was a goalie, it would have been 2 years ago, so my first year coaching, that ended up getting plucked. I want to say it was late in the year. It was probably around January, February, and he ends up getting like goalie of the week, then he's goalie of the month. And I mean, he's making a run at, rookie of the year. And it's like, wow, you kind of take a step back, and it probably, makes those coaches wonder at the next level too. Like, well, why is this guy outplaying my contracted player? Right. And it's nothing to take away from a guy. It's just the fact of we're in this interesting time right now, especially with what's going on. And you have so many players out there that are under contract, and it's like, are they really earning it? I understand the affiliations are more and more tight knit as far as players being sent down to ECHL teams. My first year in Phoenix, I think we may have had one or two contracted players, and they were there briefly, and then they were called right back up to the American League. So nowadays, I mean, everybody wants to talk about, and it's nothing to take away from Newfoundland, but you take those 10 players that were on there that were under contract. I mean, add up those contracts, you're looking at $1 million right there. So
Yep.
it's a little bit different. And, Kansas City also had that affiliation with Bridgeport and the Islanders there that year. And they, if I'm not mistaken, they did set a record or tied the record for most wins, right, for the best record of the season. And it just kind of makes you wonder, right? Especially when you look from players getting called up at each level and you got the trickle down effect. I mean, my first year coaching, I was like, all right, I'm a planner. And no, unfortunately, you can't plan on our level because you're going into the weekend again. You might be playing the top team in the league, 3-3, and Thursday night you get a phone call, and two or three of your guys are going up, and it's tough. But at the end of the day, it's my job to make sure that I have to, obviously fill the roster with other players. And I remember my first year, we were going to Evansville. We were playing Evansville home and home, and we just beat them 4-1. We were playing with 14 skaters that night at home. I may or may not have been suspended for that game, but we ended up winning 4-1, and then we're going into Evansville the next night, and we had a couple call-ups and an injured player, and I had 11 skaters. And I couldn't call anybody up from the Federal League. I couldn't call up anybody because all the Federal League teams were on the East Coast, so it's Saturday.
Yeah.
They're not going to be able to get there in time. So it's one of those things, and we ended up losing 1-0 or 2-1. It was so close, but it's one of those things where it's an experience, right? You're playing with usually 10 forwards and 6D and 2 goalies, and then now you're starting to see them. ECHL, I wouldn't be shocked if they start adding a few more roster spots because of what's going on, and they've already done the reserve spots, and then they're adding even more now. So it's I wouldn't say they're hoarding our players up there, but it's you got to be able to find that talent, right? And I think the SP is a wonderful league, especially from, and I'm not just saying that because I'm coaching there, but from the year I first played there, from when I left to what it is now, it's night and day. I've played with Division I players, like you said. You're starting to see major junior players, and I think with what's going on right now in the world and players, you're having ECHL players playing the SP this season with those 5 teams, and I think it's going to benefit the league as a whole in future years, because when you're trying to recruit a player and they're like, I'm going to go to ECHL, and you're like, well, I have a fallback plan. Usually before they're like, yeah, I'll be fine. And then they're sitting on the couch for weeks, right? I think now they're going to be more apt to say, okay, I'm going to cover myself just in case the unfortunate happens.
And especially, you have some really good relationships because you've basically lived a life in hockey, like on the bench. Like, you have some good relationships. If a kid is a stud and he's willing to come and play with you, like, they're going to find a team. Like, they have to have a little confidence. Like, there is networking that goes on. I know that everybody I've talked to always has the nicest things to say about you. And I think that says a lot about, like, your reputation. I know that we agree on a lot of things, like stirring the pot. I know you as a player are a handful, and that's maybe why I like you as a player, is like, I had a chance to watch you play, and I see the game you play, and you play like 4 times your size and 4 times as nasty as you really are, and I love that. The hockey's missing that.
Well, yeah, I appreciate that, and it's funny because we could talk about this later, but following a bunch of Instagram accounts with these skilled coaches, and you know, it, I don't know. They're tricks. There's tricks. Don't get me wrong. And I'm not taking away from anybody, but I think right now we're missing something at the lower levels. I'm not a big believer in the ADM right now. What's going on with the hockey programs? I think it could be better. We're teaching kids to stick handle, and being able to pull off a move is very like you want to do that in the offensive zone, right? Because if you lose possession, at least you're going to have at least 100 feet of ice to recover, right, defensively. But when you're seeing guys pulling toe drags in your own zone, they're losing the puck. It's like, what are you doing, right? Case in point, I just saw the NHL Instagram. Yeah, what was the post yesterday? And they're showing a kid doing the pickup move and spinorama. And I mean, first off, the kid's head's down the whole time. That's my biggest pet peeve is like play with your head up. You don't have to be the most skilled player to get by in the game of hockey as long as you have your head up. Now, if you have your head down, and I'm so sick of this eyes up. I don't know if you've heard this yet. So it's
No,
eyes
I
up.
haven't.
So you're okay. So they're allowing players at younger ages to skate with their head down, right? If they have the puck, but they have to have their eyes up. My problem with that is
That's hard.
what's the first part of contact when you get into checking, and I know they keep pushing checking, and eventually they're going to be playing in bubbles, but the focal point, like the first part of the body that's going to get hit is your head. So why are you allowing players to skate with their head down? The onus used to be on if you had the puck, like you didn't go down the trolley tracks because you knew you were taking a risk. Now it's like you're allowing players to play reckless, and then the physicality isn't there anymore because the player's second guessing. Well, if I finish my check, is my team going to be down 5 minutes now? Not even a 2-minute penalty.
Yeah.
Now you're talking 5 in a game. I mean, as soon as the Division One opened up, there was a beautiful hit from an ASU player on the U of M player.
Yeah, I saw that.
And it was a 5 in a game. And I'm like,
yeah.
So the player reaching for the puck on the trolley tracks is okay. But the player, in my eyes, who just, it's a perfect clean hit.
He's playing the puck there too.
For sure, yeah. I mean, that guy didn't have to go reaching for it. You put yourself in a vulnerable spot. So when is the onus going to go back on the puck? The person that actually is controlling the puck. But yeah, I can go all day about some stuff. And but like I said, there's something being lost in these players growing up that when they get to the professional level, I played with a player years ago that didn't know what a give and go was, right? And it's like, really? Like a give and go is pretty easy, but anyways, that's for another discussion. So
yeah, I'm right there with you. I didn't grow up. I grew up playing USA hockey, but I'm a '88 birth year. They didn't start that stuff until around '99, 2000. So I was kind of aged out before they started the American development model. But now that I'm starting to do skills camps for adults and helping out with, I have a couple peewees that I help with skill stuff. Like the Swedish development model is insane. Like these players that learn from the age of 4 all the way through 8, it's all individual skill stuff with cones on the ice, teaching game skills, like working on your own skills in these little times. I think a lot of the American development model, we push these guys to teams really quick, and the parity between players isn't there. Like some kids are better skating, other kids are better stick handling. And the hardest thing for me doing these adult camps is I can't run any drills where it's like through the neutral zone where you have to pass it to a guy. He's got to settle the puck and give it right back to you because these players haven't gone through individual passing drills and they don't have the flow to it. And some of that gets like lost when you're not focusing on individual skills. So you're right. We could go for hours on that. The Canadian development model is great because I think it initiates contact a little earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so these kids are used to having a guy draped on them or having to like fight for an area, maybe not a puck, but just like a 6-inch area. They're a little bit better at that.
I don't mind the small area games. I do incorporate that in my practices with, at the professional level. It's just that you have to, I think from there, you have to progress into more ice, right? Because your vision's not going to be there. And you're actually starting to see that. There's not that great of vision. I'm sorry. A guy making a pass from behind the net 180 feet up the ice, and most of the time that's going for icing, you're not speeding up the game of hockey. So, I mean, let's get back to the fundamentals. I think coaches and skilled people right now are doing a disservice, right? They aren't, I can flip over this with my, arm landing here and edge work. Like, come on, like, it's getting a little too ridiculous, right? And I know I'm kind of piggybacking off of Adam Oates. I mean, he has way more to say than I have.
I love his stuff.
I don't know if you caught the one on 31 Thoughts with Elliot Friedman.
Mm-mm,
I'll try to find it for you and send it to you. But he
definitely.
basically called in and was like, "Listen, I need to get something off my chest," and it's pretty much what most coaches have been saying. But I think everybody's been kind of afraid to say it because it's like, well, if if you're a skill guy and you're a skill coach and you're running these things and you're making money, then what the heck, right? And I think that's the problem, right? We're getting to where it's about greed and not. Um, I love nothing more than seeing a player progress, right? I don't care how much money I'm making. I'm
Hmm.
benefiting him. I am a coach. I am at the service of the player, right? It's not the other way around.
Yeah.
So, I mean, don't get me wrong. There's certain things that you're going to have to, implement. But at the end of the day, I tell my staff this all the time. I'm like, we are here for the players, right? So if a player needs video, you have the video already ready for them, or you're making sure that you're bettering them because at the end of the day, that's what you are as a coach and as a teacher, right? So I think, um, you know, what I'm seeing, especially firsthand with my son, they don't even have coaches. I remember being mini mite and I had a coach. They don't have
Yeah.
coaches. They just have instructors. So whoever's working in that time slot when your son's out there, and they just run drills. So I ended up, since I have the time, I wrote to the, or the union or whatever it is. And I said, hey, listen, like, I have some time. Can I just go on the ice? They're like, oh, yeah, and then I had to do the whole USA hockey, make sure they get their money, right? And I
Yeah.
was like, don't worry, I'm all covered on that because I want to coach my kids. Well, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but some of these kids, before I stepped foot on the ice, I remember one practice, a kid was clearly left-handed, but he's using a right-handed stick.
Oh
I've
no.
seen left, the left skate on the right foot, and it's you see these instructors see it, but they're not trying to do anything. They're just out there collecting a paycheck, and I don't have a problem saying that. It's the problem I have is it's not cheap to have your kids in hockey anymore, right? I mean, even when I was growing up, it wasn't cheap, and it's only getting more expensive. And you're doing a disservice to the first of all the parent and the kid, right? So at the end of the day, I think if you truly love the game of hockey and you want to see people progress, I think that's what's going to benefit you to be a better coach, right? Um, Now, when you add in 19, 20 individuals and egos and that goes a long way, right? It's still something that I wouldn't say struggling with. I'm learning more and more, but um, you realize one thing doesn't work for everybody, right?
Yeah.
There's been times where you can go in and scream and yell in between the second and third, and your team turns it around. So then you go back to the well the next time that happens, and nah, they lay a goose egg, right? And then
Yeah.
you act a little PC, so to speak, and they get the job done, and you try doing it again, and no, I mean and it's just so amazing right now with the lack of motivation with players. Um, I see it and I'm like, man, you get to play pro hockey. Do you know how lucky you are? Like, do you know and I hate to use the word entitled, but it you start to notice it. Well, yeah, I deserve this. No, you don't deserve it because it could get taken away at any moment. My rookie year, I almost lost my hand. I'm sure you've seen the
Yeah.
pictures, and if not, and that kind of brought me back to life a little bit, or not to life, to reality. And I think not that you have to go through something horrific, but I think, once you realize that things could get taken away like that, then you start to appreciate it more, right? It's no different
Yeah.
than when you move out of mom and dad's house and you own your own place, right? You want it to be, or you get a new car and you're cleaning it every day, right? But when mom and dad gave you a car that was a beater, when you're in the teens, you didn't care. You had trash bags
No.
and everything in it, right? So, it, going along those lines, it just I would like to see a little more kids being humble, I guess, and not just taking everything for granted. And I know it's probably still up there in the room there. What is it?
Yep.
Gratitude, right?
Yeah.
Live a life of gratitude, right? So, um, it speaks volumes, and I know they're all sayings, but when you actually break them apart and actually implement them, that makes a difference, right? Saying a thing doesn't mean anything, right? It's actually living it. So, but yeah,
No, you're totally right. And even like I'm 32 years old. I have always been the last kid chosen on every single hockey team I ever played. So many times it was just because there wasn't a lot of opportunities around here. My parents were willing to pay, and I was the one kid that always showed up. Like practice, games, weekend, ice. Like I just wanted as much ice time as I could get. And as I got older, I played with some really good hockey players. And like we're talking kids that were a year older than me. We went to nationals. Like these kids were getting scouted, but they just like ran out of juice for whatever reason, or they lost the motivation for it. And it was like every year, more and more kids quit. I moved up. I was like one of 700, and then the next year, you're one of 500. And at 31 years old, I was still working out and skating, and like just because out of routine, I enjoy hockey. Hockey's my life. I want to work out. I want to improve myself. But at 31 years old, it was this opportunity to play pro hockey only because, January rolls around. It's halfway through the season. There's a handful of good players, but they didn't get asked to go to camp. So they stopped skating, and then Thanksgiving came around, and then they ate a lot for Thanksgiving. And Christmas came around, they went on vacation, and then they get a call in January, and it's like, I don't even want to play. And so they probably called 15 or 20 guys, and then they get to the list, and it's me. And that was like the opportunity I had been waiting for. But it was reassurance to me that it's like, this isn't for anybody else. Like, if you want to do something, you can put in the time, you can put in the patience, and if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. But part of it is just sticking with it, not being entitled, and like, you know, I
Yeah.
don't know how to put it. Like these things happen, and I don't know if you believe in like the secret and like intentions and things like that. I found that out about 8 years ago. I'm like, oh, you can kind of have a vision, have some intentions, and you know, weird things happen where it puts you in a position to capitalize if you're ready.
No, I think you're absolutely right, and I think the one thing that I try to, as soon as this started, shifting to where, teams were dropping out this level and this level, and all I told my players are like, listen, if you can grab onto a team, great, but always be prepared, right? And
Mhm.
I kind of learned that out my rookie year when I was in Phoenix, so I hadn't even played a regular season game yet. I did Phoenix Coyote camp. I did San Antonio, played an exhibition game there. So then they're like, listen, we're going to send you down to the Roadrunners. So I'm like, all right, whatever. So I go to the coast. We play an exhibition game in Vegas. So playing that game, we get back, and I think we had like a day or two in between the next game, our second exhibition game. And the coach is like, listen, don't worry, you made the team. So that was on a Friday night. He goes, just make sure that the boys go out tonight, right? The boys that, go out and have fun because we're going to make cuts tomorrow. We're not having practice. So we go out and we have fun. Well, we had some fun, and it's a little bit different being on that time zone when the rest of the hockey world is usually in the Eastern time zone at that point, because you didn't have very many American League teams out west at that point.
Yeah.
That shift didn't happen. So I woke up, I believe it was 11 o'clock, if I'm not mistaken, Phoenix time. And I have 17 voicemails, and I'm like, what is going on, right? My BlackBerry's just blowing up. So I'm like listening, and it's my assistant coach, my head coach. Then it's, okay, well, now it's the GM from Toronto Marlies. I'm like, what is going on? And then they're frantically getting a hold of me. Luckily, our apartment was right downtown Phoenix, and we were about a 5-minute drive from the airport. But I get on the flight, and I don't get in until about 11 o'clock, 11 p.m. Eastern time. And we're playing a 4 or 5 o'clock game in Toronto the next day against Hershey, who ended up going on to win the Calder that year. But they had a stacked team with former players that I had played against in the Ontario League. And it was just a kick in the butt for me to, you know what, you should always be prepared no matter what. So, you know what, I have no regrets, right? So I played it as best as I could. And, I tried to give my team an opportunity every night as a player when I played to win the game.
I'm looking at that 2006, 2007 Marlies roster on Hockey DB right now. There were some good players that came out of that that were on that team that year that you came through there. Did you have a good draft class?
So the '03 NHL draft class it was ridiculous. I mean, I think that's probably, and I'm not saying that because that would have been my class, but that one was probably arguably from top to bottom, like depth wise. I mean, you had guys, Horton, I mean, O'Sullivan, Burns. I mean, you still have guys playing, Getzlaff, Perry,
Yeah.
right? So, I mean, the list goes on. But, yeah, in Toronto there, I remember one of the games, Carlo Koliakovo was coming back from concussion that he had against Ottawa the previous season. So he hadn't played a game in God knows how long. And anyways, he plays. He's my D partner, right? Plays the first period, breaks his finger, scores a goal before he breaks his finger. Doesn't play the rest of the game, and ends up being like first or second start of the game. And I'm like, what is going on here? Like, this is unbelievable. But it was a great experience. I think I only had about 4 games up there, but I was up there for pretty much the whole month. And what a difference being at that level and having options, right? And I think that's where you see the difference in hockey between the American League, ECHL, SPHL, because you have these players' mentality is, I need to put up points to get called up, right? It's not always the case, but with the technology we have now, video, right? When I'm recruiting a player, I can, get video from the coach if they have it. But I think before, it's not many people are sending VHS tapes across the country to scout a player, right? So yeah, I mean, that year was a fun year, and then I ended up playing in the All-Star game, and then I got stepped on, and that kind of brought me back to reality, right? And I think it was 7 months I didn't play because my hand was in a cast, and yeah, so the rest is history, so to speak.
That's something else I kind of want to touch on while I have you here. Like, keeping in mind, a lot of the guys that are going to see this are either new into hockey, or they're adults, they're just picking it up, or they're adults and they've maybe played hockey, but have never played like organized to the full extent. But a big part of it is like getting ready and this mindset, and like not knowing if you're ready to play or not. Like, I saw that, what was that? 16 years. I think your first thing on Hockey DB is Capital Center Pride in 2001, and your last one is Pure Rhythm in 2018. So 17 years. Did it get harder each off season to find like your why you were playing, or was it easy in the off season to be like, I just got to put my head down, work hard, get to the season, get there?
I don't know. I've always been kind of self-motivated. I'm a firm believer that doesn't matter how hard you work, or sorry, let's say you work hard in hockey, right? You might not get rewarded there, but because you've built this like work ethic, it's going to carry over into some aspect in your life, and you're going to be successful. Now, successful, it means different things to different people, right? Doesn't necessarily mean a bunch of money. It doesn't necessarily mean, living a glamorous life. I just personally think that you get rewarded, call it karma, call it whatever. You put in the work, you're going to get rewarded. I've seen so many players over the years, very talented players, that, like, we talked about earlier, that had lost the motivation, or they just kind of mailed it in, and they knew they can get by because they had the talent, or they, already had a contract. So for me, it was just more about being honest with myself, right? Just being honest. And I always said to myself that at the end of my career, if I could look myself in the mirror and say I gave it my all, okay, I didn't play in the NHL. I almost was there, right? I had a cup of coffee, did a couple NHL camps, and to me, I'm satisfied, right? Would it have been nice to play NHL? Absolutely, but you know what? Now I'm on to bigger and better things, right? There's another chapter in life for me, and I'm fortunate enough to obviously still stay involved with the game by being a coach. And I mean, to me, that's bizarre too. I mean, I always thought on my way out of the game that I would have to be an assistant first, right? Then work my way up. And then I thought I would have been coaching for a team that I had played for previously, and that was never the case, right? So, I mean, it's bizarre, and maybe it is because I always work so hard in the off seasons. But yeah, the motivation was just for me to look myself in the mirror and just say, you know what, I gave it my all.
You coached your brother too, didn't you?
Yeah. So yeah, So my brother, ownership thought it would have been kind of cool to have the older brother play for the younger brother. And
I think that's awesome, dude. I think that's the coolest thing in hockey.
It was fun. I remember the first practice, it was it the first or second? We were doing a drill, and okay, this is bizarre too. So for whatever reason, whenever I explain something and the player messes it up and I go to do it, it's always like perfect. Okay, so my brother, anyways, was complaining about the sticks, right? Because he played with, wooden sticks back when he was,
Yeah,
in the
and
'90s, right?
now it's Warriors, and there's two
Right.
curbs, and they're not good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. So I threw a little dagger at him with, blame the carpenter, not the tools, right? So, but anyways, going back to like what I was saying about everything works out. So one time we're doing a power play, and I'm trying to show them how to quarterback the power play. And I'm like, listen, you just give it a go, blah, blah, blah. And whoever, I forget who was out there, and they just kept messing it up. And I think they were just getting nervous, right? Because they're like, man, I'm on the spot. So I'm like, here, I'll show you how it's done. So we ran it live, right? And I ended up just taking a shot. It goes in. And I'm just like, really? Really? So then it made me start thinking back to my previous coaches who would, go out and demo the drill after we messed it up. And for some reason, it always works out in the coach's favor for the most part when they have to.
Did you ever have any coaches that didn't skate with you?
No, but there was a coach, if I'm not mistaken, he was a coach in, was it Tulsa or Wichita? I want to say it was Tulsa. And he would wear his cowboy boots and his cowboy hat at center ice. And he had like farmer's gloves, not even like hockey gloves. He'd have farmer's gloves on, and he would like pass the puck. But he wore his cowboy boots. And I was just like, wow, that's bizarre. And I do remember, yeah, actually it was Tulsa, because I remember seeing this for a pregame skate, because usually the home team would skate first and then the visiting team skates later, right? So they could get that advantage of getting, get a bite to eat and get some nap time before the game. But yeah, I was just like blown away. I was like, where am I playing? And that was the Central League. That was probably 08, 09, right? So yeah, not too far back. I don't know. Sometimes I feel like that it's closer than what it actually really is. But yeah, it's been a journey, and I love it. And I think right now with what's going on, it's tough. I try to stay involved with the coaches that aren't coaching this year, and you know, but it's like you can only watch video so much, right?
Yeah.
Because you have nobody to implement it to right now.
Uh, we're closing in on 30 minutes here, so I know that you're a big daddy here. I don't want to keep you too long. I appreciate you
I'm
jumping
good.
on for as long as you have. So, uh, we have a lot of adult hockey players that watch this. You just mentioned something about the nap. How did your pregame routine change as you got older and you got into your 30s? What changed, like from your pregame when you were 23 versus when you were 33?
Yeah, I guess having kids is an interesting task, right? But I was fortunate enough that my wife would always make sure that I had my pregame nap. So if the kids were a little restless, she would take them out of the house and go shopping, which I'm sure she didn't complain about, right? But no, I was always good I was always able to get my nap in. But it was nice to actually lay down with my kids too. I also had a dog too during the time, so that was nice to have a nap with your dog. I don't know if you ever had a dog, but
Oh
sleeping with
yeah.
your dog, I mean, for some reason, just the breathing kind of helps, settle you down, and you don't get so jittery. But yeah, I mean, I think when you first start playing pro hockey and you're taking these naps, it's hard, right? Like juniors were like right when you first start playing, like when I first started playing the O, I was like, okay, I'm thinking about the game. So like, I really wouldn't get a good sleep. And then as you get a little more comfortable, right, you're like, okay, you know what it's all about. You get into a routine. It's easier to go to sleep, right? You just have this routine, right? That's what hockey players are. We're a product of being a routine. And then you go to pro, right? So now you're back to not feeling comfortable again. And then, towards the end of it, there were some times when we were on the road, I would like Florida, for instance, I would just go for a walk, right? I wouldn't even lay down for a nap. So on my way out of the game, I started exploring the towns a little bit more during the day, because usually my dad would always say, "Well, you were in Salt Lake. Did you get to see this?" And I'm like, "No." So then, when I played against or like in Rapid City, I would go see Rushmore and Deadwood and all these other places that are around there, because when else am I going to be out there, right? So yeah, it was a little bit different, but yeah, as soon as you get in a routine, it's pretty nice.
I've gone the opposite way kind of with that. I started taking more naps the older I got. It's hard as somebody that was always a bubble player and didn't know if I was going to get scratched. I was always scared that I was going to take a nap and I was going to wake up and I wasn't going to feel good. Like I was always a game time decision whether I was going to play or not, and so I'd rather wake up maybe like an hour later in the morning. We never had a morning skate.
Mhm.
I'd like to like maybe sleep in a little bit longer, and then once I'm up, get a lot of caffeine and kind of get moving. I just found that if I sat down and took a nap, I think some of it goes down. I was telling my friend this when I was growing up. I used to have this fear that I was going to show up late to a hockey game. Like these were I would have a nightmare like this. I show up late to a hockey game. It's a big game, and they're like, "Corey, we're ready for you." And then I go to put my stuff on, and I'm missing like a skate and a stick. And I'm like, I'm not prepared. And they're like, you're on the ice. Go on the ice. And so I had this
Right.
nightmare about that. So I never liked taking naps before. I always would like double check my equipment, make sure like I didn't forget my socks or I had both gloves because I was paranoid about it. So as I've gotten like older, I started being able to like relax before, and I don't have to worry about fighting anybody in beer league. So
Right.
like you're not stressed out before like, oh, that dude's big. I'm gonna have to fight this, or is he gonna jump me because I two handed him and called his mom? You know what? The last time we played, and like my routine kind of has changed. So I don't take naps, but that's like a really hot button topic in the hockey community is naps on a game day. So I like asking
Yeah.
guys.
So, you know, I guess right before I started like not taking naps on the road, I would, so as I got older, I'd wake up earlier. So say we had a 10 o'clock pregame skate, be there for 9. So I'm leaving the place by, I don't know, like I was always usually like one of the first ones there, but I would wake up at 6. And I think waking up at 6 would tire me out enough to get that nap in, right? Where I didn't have to like force myself to go to nap. My body was just like, all right, it's time to take a nap, right? Time to rejuvenate.
Yeah.
And before I would try to take 2-hour naps and then it started slowly diminishing. And then there was times where I would fall asleep really fast, wake up 20 minutes later, and I just felt really refreshed. I'm like, okay, good. I don't need to go back to sleep because that, like you said, I didn't want to be groggy, right? I didn't want to be, in that like kind of state of like, oh, I'm kind of sleepy. And then, it's funny that you're talking about this and being late because I think it's such a different time right now with that. I remember talking to a few players my first year I was coaching, and something happened. Somebody was late, and I was like, okay, like fine them, like whatever. And somebody came to me, and they're like, well, why are you doing that? And I'm like, 5 minutes early is 10 minutes late. That was the way it
Yeah.
was for me in the Ontario League, right? Like from juniors on. And the kid's like, well, when I was at D1, and I'm like, okay, here we go.
Here we
He
go.
goes, uh, 2 of our players missed practice and we're late. And I was like, and what happened? They're like, nothing. And I was just like, I mean, I'm sorry, like things are different here. Like that's just
Yeah.
the way it's going to be. And I respected the fact that the player was going to bat for this guy, but at the end of the day, it you're not going to win it over, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's the first thing I try to implement, right? And I get like there might be car trouble, right? There, I can understand certain things, but I can't understand you walking in the door a minute before the meeting's going to start, right? Like
Mhm.
you're supposed to be there an hour early, and usually we have a meeting, so probably be there at least 10 minutes early. That way, you're still not in your suit. I would like for everybody to be in their gitch, right? I'd like to, be
Yeah.
presentable, be ready. But yeah, times are a little bit different now. So it's, I mean, even video. Um, you're starting to see it in the NHL because the coaches are coming out and talking about it, but they're actually true. You cannot have more than 5 minute video to show. So you
Yeah.
have to pick what you want, like what point is going to be the most important going into that game. Otherwise, you lose players and they're looking around and telling jokes under their breaths, and it's just like, all right, like you're defeating the purpose of having video. But yeah, definitely times are a lot different now. So hopefully, um, you know, us coaches and parents at the lower levels can do a service to the players, right, and get them obviously to where they want to be, but get them to not give the professional coaches so many problems at the end of the day.
Yeah, no kidding. I think that so many like high performance coaches are slowly becoming babysitters at a certain level, and it's a weird transition because as some of these high performance coaches, like in your mind, you're expecting to hold these guys to a higher standard. It's like, you know, you're given this opportunity to be here, do these things, but just the culture around everything involved, even the screen time. It's so funny that you say that about 5 minutes on video. You would think that these kids would eat video up and you couldn't,
Hmm.
like, you wouldn't be able to get them out of the video room. But you're right. It's like it's the opposite. You have to hook, just like in sales, you have to have a really good hook right away and you have to catch them and you have to keep their attention. And then
Yep.
you have to understand that like they might be thinking about something else and it might not be worth your time to like keep reiterating
So,
something that nobody's watching.
so how do you feel about? I don't like this idea, but I cannot stand when NHL game they're watching on the iPad after their
Yeah.
shift, because to
Yeah.
me you're not watching what's going on,
Yep.
right? Like, and another thing too, and so many things are getting lost right now. Like, I remember when I played, if I was on the bench and say a player on my team received the puck in front of our bench and some guy was going to go and blow him up, like you yelled, "Hey, head up!"
Yeah.
Nobody does that anymore, and it's
Yep.
like, why? Like, where's this getting lost at? Is it because we're and I'm guilty of it too, being on my phone, but like, is that the reason why that the communication's not there? It's funny because everybody's got their headphones in, they're listening to their own stuff to motivate them. But I used to be that guy, like, always have my own playlist on my iPod. And then I started realizing I built more like camaraderie with players when I took my headphones off and like listened to whatever music, whether I liked it or not, before the game, whoever was the DJ of the team, and you get talking the game, right? And a lot of times you don't see that anymore. Players have
Yeah.
got their headphones in. Yeah, I get that. So sometimes I'll implement, like, when I start noticing my team's not communicating on the ice, I implement, hey, you guys are going to listen to the stereo, no headphones, right? I give some exceptions to the goalies just because they're goalies,
Goalies are
and
weird. Yeah.
and I wasn't a goalie coach, right? Or sorry, I wasn't a goalie, right? I coming up. So how can I tell somebody how to be a goalie, right? All I ask is you
Right.
stop the puck and don't give up a juicy rebound, right? So
Right.
because my defensemen and everybody else should be, boxing out and picking up sticks and whatnot. But yeah, I think the little things, right? I actually, during this bubble NHL stuff, I was clipping video. Hopefully, the NHL doesn't hear me talking about it because they like to
They're not
prevent that
watching.
from happening. But I found a way to do it, and I created a whole thing that's little things that turn into big things, right? And it's maybe like something that happened 15 seconds, which is a long time in the game of hockey. 15 seconds ago, that results in a goal or a goal against, right? And you rewind it back, and it really stems from pretty much that. And then there's a few more mistakes along the way, but it's like, wow, like, it's just something so little, like chipping the puck out, or stick, having your stick in a lane. It's getting interesting, but like I said, I firmly believe, yes, kids are more skilled now than prior, but hockey sense and IQ, I don't know, not a chance. You know what? You're going to lose that argument with me because uh, if you watch any junior games, I don't know if you were able to watch them. One guy will get the puck, skate it down, he turns it over. The guy that caused the
Mhm.
turnover, he skates it down, he turns it
Yeah,
over.
it's
It's
end
like
to end.
we need, yeah, and we need to get back to. And you brought it up earlier when you were talking about with your adult camps, the passing. That is something that is becoming a lost art, and it's like you wonder, like, Joe Thornton made a career out of it. I mean, that
Yep.
guy is probably like one of the best passers. He could thread the needle. I mean, I think of Sebi Tunnell, right?
Oh
I
yeah.
can remember him being on the half wall, and as I was going back door, he would put it through so many sticks, But that's years and years of practice, and I don't think that we players know how to receive a pass or give one. It's all about looks, and unfortunately, in hockey, they still don't give points for looks, right, and style. So they ask how, not how. They ask
Yep.
how many, right? So it's, yeah, different times. That's for sure.
And and I see that. I know what you're talking about. It's like end to end. I call it run and gun. When we play beer league and you'll have a kid that's maybe 19 or 20 that hasn't played beer league come in for the first time, he picks the puck up off a rebound in his defensive zone. in the corner. He comes through the circle. He goes through the middle. I know exactly where he's going with it. And he gets down there. He tries going through the stick on two defenders. He turns the puck over, or he shoots it wide. It rims around, and the other team's they're coming the other way. And he's lackadaisical to get back because he's a winger. And I noticed that a lot. And I think that's one of the things that adult hockey players are at least better at is they think of it as like old time football. Like they try to possess it in each zone. They're like, okay, that guy's there. I'll pass it. I'll move up to the next spot. He'll give it to me here. And we just kind of like,
Yeah, and you're right, and then that kind of goes into like my theory about the game of hockey right now and where it's at and where it's going to go. And I'm not that you're going to see the dump and chase game like it was way back, but there's still going to be a tactic, right, of that, because now you're seeing so many teams hold, lines and trap and different inversions of the trap in the neutral zone. You're going to start seeing more teams, and like Dallas, for instance, St. Louis, when they won the cup, I mean, they were putting the puck in. Columbus is a very good team. If you ever watch them in transition, their D get it. It's either D to D, right up, and those guys, they just tilt their sticks, and it's going right back into the zone. And when you think about it, as a defenseman, I hated when you get the puck out of the zone, there's a turnover, and you're like, oh, crap. Now it's coming
right back at you.
Now you're hemmed in for another, 10, 15. And then that starts to wear on teams. And I think you're starting to see that more than teams that want to be puck possessive, entering the blue line. And you're starting to see more and more turnovers there. And then it's going the other way with odd man rushes. So, just kind of piggyback off of what you're saying. It's nice to finally talk a little bit more with somebody about hockey, right? Instead of my kid who he's not ready there yet. He's going to be 7 soon, but no, he makes me laugh. Sometimes he'll draw up some plays, but he's a hockey guy, that's for sure.
I wonder where he gets it.
Probably from his mom.
Right. I like when we play some of these adult teams that are better, that maybe have younger guys. The only thing that I tell these guys is make that other team go 200 feet. Like, it doesn't matter how fast you are, or how good you are. You might be able to beat me in a 6-foot space, or if you're in my zone, you might be able to skate around me. But if I'm going to put the puck in the corner, and every single shift, your best player is going to have to get it out of the zone. He's going to have to skate it. You're going to have to go through guys. You're going to have to get it to my end. You do all that work. You get it to my end. I'm going to play it high and hard off the glass. And I know the arena I play at, I can play it off the glass. It's not going to be an ice. It's going to sit where I want it to sit. And you're going to have to turn around and you're going to come right back. And guess what? It's beer league. You're not having fun. Like, we beat a lot of teams 3-2 because we score a couple of goals, and then it's like 200. We just say 200. And
no, it's funny that you just mentioned, it's not going to go for ice. So that was one thing I always, I wouldn't say took pride in, but in warm-ups, wherever building we were in, I would always know where the banks were. And I always used to rim the puck, right? Because you never know, there might be a piece that's sticking out and it might pop out front. But players nowadays don't even do that. They don't, like, I know in our building, there's some sweet spots that if you miss just shy, it's going to pop right back out. And when we do those in a game, I'm not saying like we have set plays to do it, but it should be like, hey, if there's a fast player and you could get it off that bank, he's going to get to it first. And it looks pretty when we score those goals. But it's like a lot of times players don't even think that. Even when I played in Barrie years ago, on our power play, teams were starting to take away. What's his name? Brian Little was on the point with me, so I knew they were cheating on him. So I would fire it short side, and there used to be, I don't know if it's still there, a restaurant right behind there was a restaurant, so it would really ping off the backboard there. And Jakub Petrzelek would be on the opposite side, and he knew as soon as it was coming off, it was going to be a wide open net. And I mean, it's just the little things. And it was funny to watch the bubble games here and the exhibition games. I noticed a lot of teams were literally getting the puck in the D zone and wiring it down like almost cross corner, and their player were beating out the icing. And I don't know if I want to watch a full 60-minute game of that, but I think that's something that you could use to your advantage, right? If you know your building, right? And obviously they were pretty much playing in only 2 buildings the whole time, so they must have known, obviously, coming into there, that those who are doing it, but it's just little details, right, that are professionals are getting away from, right? So sorry,
You're
I keep
totally right.
rambling
That
on.
one of the actually, I'm working on this shootout move, and it's you go in, you play the puck hard off the board, you shoot, you take a shot, but you have to let the refs know. You play the puck off the board, it comes back out, and you one time it to yourself.
So I wonder what the ruling would be about that. I
It
mean,
only
there's
works
so
in
many.
beer league. It doesn't work in the real league because
Right.
the red line, the passing the red line. But you're right. I know that these boards, as a right hander, on the right hand side, on the non Zamboni tunnel side, I can get the puck. If I play it hard enough on the ice, it'll pop right back out as a one
Mhm.
timer. I think you're right. Like these like little nuanced things that you can't get from playing a video game are getting lost. I like clutch and grab hockey.
Mhm.
I think that if I'm playing against a bunch of skilled guys, I'm gonna put big goons out there and I'm gonna tell these guys, hey, just ride these guys, ride these coattails until these dudes are like are tired of you and they're like, get off. And all of a sudden you're in their head and their coach is yelling at their players because they're like, hey, stay focused. That guy's not that good. Don't let him be on you. And like you're getting those players get it from two angles basically. But the clutch and grab, I think, is going to come back just a little bit. I understand with the rules, the stick rules, the holding rules, they're calling them the opposite way. But I think that teams that can like control a speedy or a skilled team by hanging on them and getting away with it is where this is going to head. Because if you have if you're Edmonton puts four guys out there that are goal scorers on a 5-man line, like Draisaitl, McDavid. I mean, they put five guys out there that are going to score. How do you stop a 5-man stud? Well,
Mhm.
you put some big guys out there that are just going to lean on them and make it hard to play, and hopefully you take enough space away that your guys score one and you win 1-0. Like it doesn't have to
Mhm.
be this like shootout.
Yeah, the 7-5 games, and yeah, I mean, it's funny because I'm a traditionalist. I like, if it's a good game and it ends in a tie, it ends in a tie, right? You run your
Right.
5 minute, overtime. I know the ECHL was running, was it 7 minute overtime last year, to try to prevent the shootout, right?
Yeah.
Because I can remember, I'd be upstairs doing something. My brothers would be like, "Oh, there's a penalty shot, right?" And you'd run downstairs to watch a penalty shot. Now it's no. I mean, I personally don't get excited for it. It's
Yeah.
I don't know. Like that year, Edmonton ended up making it all the way to the finals, and the reason why they got into the Stanley Cup playoffs is because of their shootout wins.
Yeah.
I mean, they still made it to the finals, right? But I mean, I don't know. I just think unless you come up with like a different point difference, right? Like win in regulation means more than in overtime or in a shootout. Give out half points. I don't know. Do something because right now I just think the game needs a change, right? And I would love for them to bring the red line back in for a 2-line pass because you had to be a good team in
Yeah.
order to move the puck up. And if you weren't a good team, you were stuck in your zone all night. And unfortunately, that's how it is, right? But this long passes, stretching out, I hated it. As soon as they changed the rules from 2-line pass to okay, now we're getting ready to red line as a defenseman. Okay, great. I stand at the blue line, right? So they stretch me out because I got to respect the guy who's stretching out, and
Yeah.
then I don't have a gap on the guy who's carrying the puck because you hope that your forwards do a job of a good angle, but I mean it's pretty hard, right? With the way the game is, I do like the clutch and grab. I think if you bring it back in a neutral zone, you might prevent some of these injuries that are going on, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, as far as telling kids to have their eyes up and you're allowing them to have their head
Yeah.
down,
No
they're still
kidding.
going to have concussions. So at the end of the day, they need to change that. And it's funny over the years, all that they change is the verbiage, right? I mean, you can't say hitting in USA hockey, but you can say checking, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Contact.
yeah. And the more they and the thing I don't understand is the more you push that back, the more injuries you're going to have because these players aren't used to it. And it's no different than Joe's dad who's coaching high school football because he back in the 70s played and they're teaching kids to lead with their head. Well, no wonder why you have problems, right? I mean, there's a proper way of doing things. And I think if we get the fundamentals down, we can improve the game like twofold at least. And it'll be more exciting. I mean, people don't go to NASCAR to watch the them go around the track. They want to see the crashes, right? We're animals at the end of the day. We liked watching gladiators way back, our ancestors, right? Battle to the death. I mean, it's in our blood. It's either fight or flight, right? I mean, there's no other way. So I think, if I ever see somebody leave the arena during a fight in a hockey game, then okay, I might not think this way, but I still have yet to see somebody or turn off the TV at home.
You're totally right. You're totally right. And
But,
I think, some of these, I think Minnesota, Michigan, and New York are probably the most affected by that rule, because I've watched a lot of 13-year-olds that are really good that are in Michigan, Minnesota, and New York, and then their teams play a Canadian team that's just right across the border, and these Canadian teams are so much better than these kids. And I don't think it's like genetics or culture or any of that. It's the development model, especially these
mm-hmm.
kids that have only been playing 2 or 3 years. They don't know, like, they didn't come into hockey knowing a set of rules like a lot of these adults do. Like a lot of the guys that I coach are like, I've watched hockey since the 70s, and I remember when Kansas City had an NHL team, and I'm glad to get out there. They've at least seen the game, and they have favorite players, and they can play it. A lot of these kids that are getting into it think it's maybe soccer or lacrosse or like, and then you give them this set of rules, and all of a sudden you set them up against some Canadians, and these kids are like, great skaters.
Right.
You can't bump them off the puck. They're passing to each other, and your goalie that's only a goalie because he's the worst skater on the ice is going to get lit up by these kids that know how to shoot.
Yeah, and I have a theory that the reason why they keep pushing back the hitting is because you see such a drop off rate, right? Once contact starts coming in both, in whether it's in football or in hockey, you see such a drop off rate. So it's like, oh well, we can still continue making money if we keep pushing it back, right? Um, and then if you want to talk about the fighting in the game, well, let's be honest here. The NHL is a business. Okay. So if they want to be on the national network, they want to be on NBC. NBC is telling them, hey, listen, you can't have fighting in the game anymore, right? I mean, don't get me wrong. There are still fights that are being on, but it's not nearly what it could be.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it is what it is. And I think once people realize it's a business, um, you could kind of understand a few things here and there. But as a sport, right, for kids to play, I think that we can do a lot better.
100%. And I'm kind of mixed on this. I grew up like not being a good hockey player, like being physical and being willing to fight was always my invitation, I guess, to play or whatever. But being a part of the culture, like watching that Pro B documentary, watching Ice Guardians, and watching some of this other stuff, I understand the PR side, the PR challenge with fighting is, you look at this subset of players that have a horrible quality of life after they play, or even during their playing. Like
Mm-hmm.
you watch some of these, like the quality, like during playing during those years was so bad that it's like, I don't want to see that happen to like my brothers, the guys that I play with. But a part of me on that other side is like, well, I watch European hockey and I watch the stick work, and I have friends that have played in Europe that have gotten hurt with stick work that have never been able to play since then. And I see some of the head contact and the hits that are being thrown against guys that nobody's going to stand up and fight that guy to say, hey, you can't play against my guys like this. It's so hard to know which way to go. It's like, I can see you getting rid of it because of the players that are in the pool of players now are all soft and not willing to do it and whatever. But part of me holds out for like hope that maybe this next generation of kids has a little bit more jam and a little bit more grit, and they understand it's like, no, this isn't about me fighting to kill you. It's like standing up for an unwritten rule or showing everybody, hey, this isn't acceptable. Like, you don't play like that.
Right.
I don't.
I think, like, so when I think of like NHL hockey, like when it was like, Proby and all those guys, it wasn't like Probert was grabbing, the skill player and throttling him, right?
Yeah.
And they didn't have the instigator rule. But then you bring this instigator rule in, and, it certain players could use it to their advantage, right? Because they can be rats and hopefully bait a person into a penalty. But at the end of the day, if it's a respect thing, right? I knew that if I took a run at a skilled player, I'm probably going to have to answer the bell. It happened in Colorado years ago when I was in Central League. I blew up Ed McGrain, ended up being my teammate in Kansas City. There, I blew him up at the blue line. He's he tells his story perfectly. He's like, yeah, as soon as you blew me up, he goes, I knew Bernie was going to come after you. And so the play keeps going on, and their coach sends Bernie out there. Well, he can't get to me because we already touched the puck and they're escorting me in. And I like, I'm sitting there on the thing and I'm like, all right, this sucks. Cause you know, you have to fight a heavy and you're looking up at the clock and you're like, okay, he's not out there. Right at like 2 seconds left out of my penalty. And I got to go across the ice. Sure enough, here comes Bernie. He's like, you want to go? I'm like, do I even have a choice at this point?
Right.
But I mean, I think that's the difference, right? Like, okay, I took a run at your guy. I'm answering the bell. I mean, but now you have this instigator role, and it's like, come on, like, quit hiding behind it, right? I don't know. I think there's a lot of different things that can be implemented more, and I'd like to see more net. It's funny how they let the boys play in the playoffs, right? Like the net front battles, and then you take it to the regular season, and it's like penalty, penalty,
Right.
penalty, and it's like that's the fun of it, right? Like, I don't care if a player hits over 100 points in the NHL season. I mean, you had Lemieux and Gretzky and all these guys putting up 200, like Eisman put up 200 points.
Yeah.
And I know people call that the dead puck era and all this, but guess what? Why didn't everybody else put up that many points? Right. Mm-hmm. And if you look at it, you have more power plays today, right? These guys should be putting up more than 150 points. So what's the difference, right? Is it the technology? So you mean to tell me if Gretzky had a one-piece stick and had awesome boots, and so what? He would put up what, 300? I mean, I guess it's tough to compare. And I'm going to go on a little tangent here. I don't know if you
I love it. No, this is
like TED Talks, right? So this guy asked if athletes today are better than way back then. And there was I'm going to mess this up. There was a bicycle race. This person set a record in the 70s, I believe. So this person recently, within the past 10 years or 15 years, did the same one and like smoked it by 20 minutes. So then they're like, okay, now you have to ride the same bike that person, did it on. So they tried to, make it the weight and stuff, because I think they still had this bicycle somewhere, in somebody's basement. I don't know. So they, made sure that technology was kind of, the same of, 1970s. The guy beat it by like not even a minute. Right. And then when you look at athletes now, they're paid. They have sponsors, right? You think of NHL players and like Olympic athletes back in the day, they had jobs.
Yeah. In the summer.
I mean, well, no, I mean, even NHL players.
Legit.
No,
yeah,
NHL
they were all beer
players
distributors. They would work.
Right. Or they would have to clean the rink after. I mean, it's crazy that we have this like fascination with athletes nowadays. And I mean, I could go on more, but it's like, here's the problem I have with sport now, whether it's hockey, football, basketball, everything, it's politics. Get it out of the game. Just go out and play the game. I don't care what you believe in, this and that. Just please play the game, because it's a sport. And I think that's where I'm kind of losing interest in the major sports, right?
Bro, you're preaching to the choir. I mean, when this whole thing started, I mean, I saw basketball's NBA numbers. I think it was 175% decrease since they started adding some of the political stuff, and it's become such an entertainment sector. And there's this big crossover where now you have guys that are entertainers and not athletes, and athletes want to be entertainers. It's like the old adage, like rappers want to be athletes, athletes want to be rappers. It's like they're glorifying this lifestyle, and this is cool, and you get a water sponsorship, and you get to post on Instagram, and you get to tell people you're an athlete, and you're out there grinding and getting it. But yeah, they said I watched one of those TED Talks, and it was about the 4-minute mile or whatever. For the longest time, I think it was the 4-minute mile stood as nobody could crack it. But the second a guy cracked the 4-minute mile, or it might have been the 3-minute mile, 15 people within, I think, 5 days beat it. So it was just like a mental, barrier.
Right, because people were probably pacing themselves, right? And they're like, "Oh, okay, well, I'm gonna hit it, right?" Instead of just going. Yeah, I mean, Yeah, I think, mentality has a huge factor on results at the end of the day. And, it's no different than, athletes go through struggles and, whether they're not getting their points and it's weighing on them. But it's like, especially in hockey, you can bring so much more to the table. You can make a good pass. You can win all your faceoffs of your centerman. You can block shots. I mean, there's so much more that I feel like we don't. I think we teach kids nowadays to be so individualistic, and maybe the answer is each kid in as their mini mite to, let's just say, squirt peewee. They play all the positions, right? That way, forwards can learn how to skate backwards because it's 2020 and forwards still don't know how to skate backwards. But you get what I'm saying, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's like, well, I'm a forward. I don't need to skate backwards. Well, okay. Well, if they're going to get rid of hitting, you're going to have to angle even more, right? And you're starting to see that introduced now. Um, so yeah, I mean, it's like being able to have. I guess the thing is, like, why would you want to be so good at just one thing when you could try to be great at everything, right? Or sorry,
It's
be great at one thing and then at least be good at everything else, right?
it's an ego thing. I see it a lot, like ego, like through. I'm a little bit different. I've taken like some time off the last 10 years to work on my mindset, my mental health. I live a different life than most people. I don't have some desk job. I'm kind of like counterculture in a lot of these aspects, like entrepreneurship. I have my own time. I have certain non-negotiables. Like I always sleep in my bed if I can. I sleep a certain amount of hours. With the oils and the darkness and the temperature, like certain non-negotiables. But these things change so quick. I think you're going to be really happy to hear this. John Scott's been coaching, I think, a Pee Wee team here in Kansas City, and he has these kids blocking shots. He has
Good.
12-year-olds at their turn blocking shots, and you know what? They're winning tournaments. They're playing team
Absolutely.
first, and it's so cool to see it. They went down to Nashville. They won a tournament. They're like cleaning up, and for him, I don't think that he thought that that would be an effective like coaching strategy. But after talking to him, he's like, "I'm a team first guy. I want you blocking shots. I want you back checking. I want you picking up your other guys." Like that style of hockey is for youth. It's all like win, 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 develop. Oh, we have these two kids. One of them might get drafted. Well, what about that last kid on your roster?
Right.
Like,
No, you're absolutely right. And it's funny because Dixie was the best at it. He was the best at blocking shots. I mean, he found a way. It probably wasn't the most conventional way of being able to block it, but I mean, it got the job done, right? And I remember him taking off his shin pads and seeing the backs of his calves and the backs of his like hammies, and I'm just like, oh man, that's gotta hurt. But yeah, I mean, that goes a long ways. And even even when guys block shots, guys don't stick tap. Guys don't even stick tap
yeah,
anymore when somebody fought for and it's coming out of the box. I mean, you stood up and you bang
yep,
on that because guess what? That guy did something that probably majority of the team's not going to do. It's
yep.
probably the most selfless thing is blocking shots and fighting and sticking up for your teammates. And I tell guys all the time, I don't care if you fight, but at what point when I try to explain, if somebody's picking on your sister or your brother or your mother, what are you going to do? Just stand there and take it and hopefully the police show up? Like, no, you're going to take matters in your own hands. So hockey really used to be a game that separated men from the boys. I don't really necessarily think it is anymore, but um, win, lose, or draw, at least you showed up. And maybe these kids don't do that because they're so afraid of it being on social media, right?
Yeah,
And
looking bad.
maybe that's where we're at. Maybe that's where we're at. I mean, thankfully, mine are probably still on VHS somewhere, but I mean, even then, it's whatever. You win some, you lose some, right? But it's not like there's a reason why. And I think that's like going back to like what you were saying about the whole fighting thing. There was a reason why, and then it kind of got a little okay, well, you are just going to go out there and fight that guy, right? It wasn't like, okay, that guy ran our player, so please go send him a message, right? And then there's times where, yeah, you need to send a message because the team's gloating and after scoring, they're coming by the bench and they're doing things that, there's rules, right? I don't like the unbelievable celebrations and the jersey things and,
Right.
you know, yeah, there's there's still a respect factor right in the game, and I think we're getting away from that as well. And we're just the thing that I laugh about is the whole Matthews and Kane doing the after. You do remember that game? And
Yeah,
I'm just
yeah,
like, why don't you guys just square up and fight? I think that'd
right.
be more entertaining because both of you guys are caliber guys. So, but
Same size
that
and same size too. So like that's
right.
they
I
don't
mean,
even think about that. They don't even think about that. Like, oh, he's
right.
my size. I
Well,
have a go with him? It's
think of the Stanley Cup playoffs. LeClavier and Iginla.
yeah,
Who would have thought Vinny the Clavier? But guess what? He's the captain. He's going to lead the team, right? So, that was a very high spirited bout. I think it was great. But
Tavares did that this year too. Tavares did
mm-hmm.
that. I don't know if it was in the playoffs or it was his last game. One of his last games he was going to play for Toronto, I think. And he
No,
went
yeah,
out there
you're right.
and he started a fight. And it's everybody was like, "Why is he
Mm-hmm.
fighting?" It's like he wants to show his guys that he wants to play and that this isn't acceptable and that there's a culture to playing in Toronto, as you know. There's like a culture to this stuff, and you
Oh
can't
yeah,
just like skate by it and not pay homage.
no, and then yeah, and I think that's the thing is like with Dixie, he was willing to block shots. Yeah, if somebody was messing with Dixie, I would be the first one in there. Not
Yeah,
because like him and I are like pretty close friends off the ice. It was because you're wanting to do the same thing. You have the same idea as me. We're trying to win this game, and you're willing to put your body on the line. You're willing to potentially break your ankle, break your leg, like probably even break some ribs. Yeah,
yeah.
I'll probably do the same for you. So, and I think that's where I always use the term loss in translation, and it's like, where do you find that? Where are we losing? Whether it's parents, upbringing, or coaches, and I know now it's a little bit different because you can't say certain things and implement certain things, but hockey's a game of, let's put it this way, it's the only sport where you can bare knuckle fight.
Yeah,
I mean, why wouldn't you want to fight? That's just me though.
with you.
But I don't know. I have some different thoughts, and I'm somewhat of a traditionalist, and I'm not saying that every game should be a gong show. They're like, think about the games between us, like in Kansas City, they're against Allen.
Yeah,
Fans loved it, and it was great because it was entertaining. It was part of the game. It was sport, right? And it wasn't just some, you know, I don't even know what to compare it with, but I mean, it was you knew going into that night, like if you had 2 days before that game against Allen, you knew you were in for a war, and I think that's what brings out the competitiveness of all players, right? Because now you have the skill guys taking cheap shots at somebody. I mean, everybody was involved, and you don't see that anymore. I think you just see, okay, you have your guys that are gonna rough it up. You're probably not gonna have your skill guys getting in there, but I mean, back in Kansas City, everybody was willing to do it. I mean, Sebi ripping
right. We'd have to jump a guy
ripping
if
the,
you have to.
yeah. I mean, you do what you got to do, and you hopefully don't get caught. But I think at the end of the day, it was like a team toughness as opposed to just having one or two donkeys to go out there and do your thing, right? So I'd like to see the game go back to that more, and just I think you add more respect in the game when you play the game that way as opposed to having a skill guy watch somebody get taken advantage of and they're 2 feet away and they don't do anything, right? And I'm not saying he's got to go in there and beat him up, but at least show you care.
Right. It might not even be that guy's beating up somebody. It might just be a fact that you understand that your guys are flat, or that this is an opportunity that you can stick your neck out there and be like, "Hey guys, come on, jump in." No, we're
Mm-hmm.
here to play. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, sorry, this other team, like, it might not be on the scoreboard, but there's a lull going on, or this is a good time to get some energy. Like,
Mm-hmm.
kids aren't perceptive of those things that are going on. The
No.
game within the game nowadays,
Mm-hmm.
like
Yeah.
when to call that timeout, when to maybe, I Iron Man when I beer league, so like I'll play the whole game. We have 10 guys. It doesn't matter. I'll play the whole game. Well, there'll be times when I see the pace changing and I know that I'm either like tired or behind. I'll ice the puck and then I'll take forever to get back. Or I'll let the guy take a shot on my goalie so I can get a face off. So then I can take like 5 or 10 minutes, get kicked out of the face off, and have another guy get in, and like I know those little games to play, and it's light years ahead of all these like younger kids that are playing juniors or even thinking about playing club hockey and some of this stuff. It's like I had a coach one time that we were playing in the championship, and he called a mouthpiece check for the other team. Guess what? Their two best skaters didn't have mouthpieces, so they had to get off the
Right.
ice. They had to go to the corner. Like, I love that shit. That's my
Oh yeah.
favorite thing to do is be like, sir, can you check his stick? I, his helmet's not HEC certified. That visor
Right.
he's wearing is not. I love that
Oh,
stuff.
the one coach from Allen used to always constantly get on the refs to come over and tell me that my visor was up too far. I don't know if you remember, I used to wear it all the way up. So then I would just I would tilt my head like
Yeah,
this so it looked like it was, and I would just go on and continue playing. But kind of going back, like those little things, like you're saying, like, oh yeah, it take forever. Like players don't know to go well now that they implemented the new rule on an icing. Like you can't really do that anymore. But yeah, beer league you can do that. When players used to stretch out, when I was a defenseman, I would just as soon as the puck was coming up, I would bump them offside. Guess what? It's an offside face off. Okay, like you can't call me for interference. It's not like I'm
right.
actually grabbing the guy and throwing him. I would just make it look like, oh, I ran into you and you picked up your foot. Well, yeah. So yeah, there's definitely little things, and yeah, players nowadays, it's I don't know.
Yeah.
It's
We'll
frustrating.
we'll switch gears just a little bit because I don't want to keep you much longer.
All right.
What are some tips you maybe have for adult hockey players or beer league players from your years of not only being a player, but now that you've stepped back and you're a coach and you can kind of see some of the important things? What tips would you give maybe an adult hockey player?
Um, Probably just enjoy the game, right? I think if you're passionate and you love something, you're gonna probably put more and more effort and time into it, and you're gonna create a good work ethic and just embrace it. Obviously you could talk about skating and passing and shooting and all this stuff, but at the end of the day, if you're passionate about something, you put your whole heart into it, you're gonna find a way to get improved, right? So I guess that's what I would have to say, because the game of hockey is a beautiful thing, and I might be biased, but it's probably the best game in the world. And you know what? I want more and more people to play it and experience it because it's such a great thing. And I've been fortunate enough to have a career in it, and obviously continue on. And my goal right now is I hope one day I coach somebody that ends up going to the NHL, right? Or American League. I think that would just be a great thing to watch them progress. But that's my selfishness in wanting that. But it's such a beautiful game, and it's a lifestyle. And I think people forget that it's a lifestyle. And I feel like you see a lot of people who think they know the lifestyle, and it's like, no, you're missing it by a mile, right? And I don't know if you watch Letterkenny.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
yeah, so I mean, what I can, if you don't play the game and you watch that, you might have the wrong idea of the lifestyle. But us that know the lifestyle laugh at it even more because it's somewhat true, right? And it's a
right.
little extreme. But yeah, I enjoy that show too.
Did,
It's a
did you
good
ever
one.
watch? Did you ever watch Fubar the movie on the
Oh
bus?
yeah, oh
I
yeah.
think okay, so I think that when people are like, "What's your favorite hockey movie?" Slapshot, Young Blood, Mystery Alaska. I'm like Fubar. They're like,
Right.
"That's not a
Fubar's
hockey movie."
good.
I'm like Terry is a hockey player. Like
Right.
it's riddled with like if you watched that movie and your brother, your sister, your husband was a hockey player, you'd be like, Terry's a hockey player. Like you,
Yeah.
you get it,
Oh,
right?
absolutely. No, I mean the one-liners in that movie is unbelievable. I have it on DVD actually, and I should probably pump it in when the kids go to bed. But no, I actually just watched Red Penguins last night, the documentary when the Pittsburgh Penguins bought
I
the
saw it.
Soviets
Yeah.
there. It was funny because the movie ended. My wife's like, "So what do you mean?" And I'm like, so my oldest brother loved movies, so when I would watch movies with him, he would there's foreshadowing and all this stuff. And if you truly understand movies, it's not very many movies that will have a twist in it, right? You catch it before it ends up happening if you actually start watching movies and understand how they are. But yeah, like I was like, that was a perfect ending for it because it's just, yeah, it is what it is,
Yeah.
right? It was Russia, it was what was going on at the time, and it's crazy. These documentaries I like them. Last Dance I thought was great, And
Very
what
good.
was great about it too is like it even brought in my wife, who, I mean, she likes sports, but like I didn't know that she'd be like, "Hey, let's watch another episode." And I'm like, "Yeah, sure, I'm game for it." So, yeah, there's a couple other documentaries I want to see. There's one called, is it the? Well, I have it in my notes here. Yeah, that's the only thing I really enjoy
Summit
about my
series.
phone.
The Summit
Summit
series is a
series.
good. Yeah, that's a good
Yeah,
one. That's
In Search
from
of
the.
the Greatness.
Okay.
So apparently there's like Pele, there's Gretzky, there's all these top athletes from each sport, and the director's trying to figure out, these guys aren't the biggest people, they're not the most jacked people, they're, what is it about them and why were they so successful and so dominant in their sport, right? I mean, you could take that with like Connor McDavid too. I mean, the guy's unbelievably fast, but it's like he's not this behemoth of a player, right?
Yeah, if you see him
So
with his shirt off, you're like, what he plays a sport?
right, exactly. I mean, and so I think that's the stuff that interests me, right? Like, why is somebody so successful at something, right? What is it that they see that they don't? Like, let's be honest, Gretzky saw the game at a different level.
Yeah,
Whatever it was, he knew what was going on, you know, seconds before it actually happened. And it's amazing because you sit there and watch games. I just had a 1959 game on finals for my son the other day. He was watching, so it's in black and white, and it's funny to watch. I think people actually nowadays should go back and watch games that haven't seen like 50s and 60s hockey, and you'll realize how fast the game actually was.
right.
And then if you add the technology, so if these players had better skates, better this, I mean, they'd be even more advanced. But it's like they still played the game pretty tough, and you're talking about using 2x4s for sticks. That's not
In
easy.
in a barn that they're keeping ice down, and they probably don't have air conditioning inside. There's 5,000 people. They're all smoking cigarettes.
Oh yeah.
Like, and these barns were not set up to like gear towards athletes, so the locker rooms or bathrooms. Like,
No, it's yeah. I mean, I did play with a few guys who would have cigarette breaks in between the periods, but
I think that
those days
that's
are
true.
gone.
I don't think I have any more questions. We've been trying for an hour here. Like, this has been the coolest thing for me. Like I said, I when they built this rink in 2009 in Kansas City, I grew up uh, like a mile from the rink. I had to drive 50 miles every day for 13 years to play hockey. And then the second I graduated high school, they built that rink right down the street from me. So from day one, I was at that rink. I got to watch all you guys play. I think that the CHL days for the Mavericks were like the glory days. I hope maybe it'll be me. I think somebody should write a book or do a documentary about those years of the CHL before it, like between the UHL and the ECHL. The CHL was amazing. Like all the markets they had, the guys that played, these barns that they built, like Kansas City, Allen,
Hmm.
Tulsa, like they're all the same cookie cutter barn now, but like they went out and built 7 or 8 arenas to get these teams in these markets, and it's been super cool. So watching you play for the Mavericks and like liking your style of play and seeing the jam that you had and how much you stirred the pot, then seeing you make the transition and become a successful coach and like really like prosper personally. Like I've seen you smile a ton. Like I said, when I met you back in 2019, we talked coaching for like 5 hours. We shut a bar down. Like you're just generally a good dude. And I don't have enough friends that are this deep into hockey. And so this has been fun for me. So I really appreciate you taking the time to sit down and talk with me. And hopefully we can do
Hey,
this again.
anytime. Yeah, no, I enjoy it, and I like talking hockey. It's obviously my life, so it's nice to be able to get new ideas and bounce ideas off people. And I think that's my first year coaching. It was a struggle. I was just me by myself, right? So who do I have to talk about with the power play, right? My equipment manager. I mean, and it's no offense to him. They would, oh, okay, I see what you're saying, but it's like, are you agreeing with me because I'm the coach? Like,
Yeah.
so yeah, it's it's going to be interesting going back. I think it's going to be a little more difficult than I anticipate, but I'll try to be as prepared as possible, right? Because this long pause is it's only getting longer. So
No kidding. Well, hopefully you're able to get a skate in or maybe a workout or something before the end of the year. I know that's hard with kids and holidays and everything, but you've spent your whole life playing hockey. I talk about this with my friends that play beer league. They're like, "Do guys that play at the top level like playing beer league?" I'm like, I don't know a lot of them that do because it's kind of like a tumultuous thing. Like I understand not playing, but hopefully soon you can skate around. You can get a skate in, maybe with your kids. You can go out and play hockey because, like, I'm sure it's like meditation for you. Like, there's probably not a lot of other things that make you feel the way hockey does, and I think that's one of the things that's special about it.
For sure. No, and I think that's what going from a player to coach. It's you as a player, you can perform right, and you feel good about yourself. Then as a coach, it's like, all right, like you win a game, but it's like you still have to go back out, the next day and find what's that drug, right? What's going to get you up there to the same level? And it's hard to find, and I understand why players probably go through depression after they're done playing, but you know what? It's fun. You got to find a way, right, to make it work for you. And I think once it gets colder here and I can skate in the backyard in the morning, I'll be much happier, man.
And share it. You can see that, like, this is a fun thing. So I Googled you before. I'm like, well, who's this good looking guy?
Right. I had hair.
Yeah. Who's this guy rocking the Reebok? You didn't tell me you were a cover model.
Oh, that's funny. So this guy, he was an older player. So that was obviously the Central League. And we're getting dressed. This was after my wrist injury. I just recovered. So this was going into my second year. And he's like, where are you from? I'm like, Sterling Heights, Michigan. And he's like, no. And I'm like, no, I grew up 15 Van Dyke. I've been explaining. He goes, I grew up in Sterling Heights too. It was the most bizarre thing. And I can't remember his name. It's probably on there somewhere, but
Chris Bartoloni.
Yeah, Bartoloni. Yeah. So he was obviously years older than me. I mean, he's a grizzled vet there, but yeah, he grew up in the same city that I grew up in and probably a few miles away from me, but we never crossed paths because he was just so much older. Right. So I got to change that 8U on there. How do I change that? That was for my USA hockey thing.
It might be.
There it is.
Yep.
That's funny. But,
dude, that's funny that you were out in the desert. I'm the biggest fan of hockey in the desert right now. I think hockey in Nevada, Arizona, Southern California, even into Colorado and Idaho, like hockey out west, I'm super big on right now.
No, you're absolutely right. And I think so when I first played out there, a lot of players weren't wanting to go out there because they knew at the time I'm trying to think what would have been the nearest American League team. Maybe
there was nothing out
San Antonio. There. San Antonio was somewhat close, but yeah, I think that was as far west as they had gotten. And players were like, well, I would rather take less money in the East, somewhere on the East Coast.
Right.
And get called up because you have way more American League teams. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. I'll make more money there, and then get called up. So it was interesting. But yeah, now you have this whole shift with, it doesn't matter where you play in the ECHL nowadays. But it's crazy.
Guy, like you said, it's the opposite. Guys are taking pay cuts to play in warm climates now. Guys would rather go to Pensacola or Jacksonville or it's like, well, do I want to go to Ohio, Pennsylvania, Maine for winter, or do I want to?
Well, think about the SP. Like when I'm recruiting, there's a guy, I'll never forget my first year. So I'm like new to this recruiting thing. And I'm like, okay, I got this guy locked in. And he's like, no offense. He's like, I can't play golf all year round. And I was like, okay. I said, hey man, like if that's what you need, great, So then I'd make sure hey, we're playing this guy extra hard tonight, when we play against them. Right. But yeah, I mean, it's crazy that players would rather, they think that way, right? And it's different, right? It's different time in your life. Like for me, I wanted to play as close to home as possible so my parents could come and watch me. My parents came and watched me play professionally one time in my whole professional career. And the first time they came, I sucker punched Conrad Reeder in Rapid City on a Tuesday night, so I was suspended for the weekend. So my parents didn't get to see me play. And then the next time they actually got to see me play was when my son was born in Independence there, and then we were playing on the weekend. Or sorry, no, my parents couldn't make it down for him being born because there was like 14 feet of snow here. It was ridiculous. It was like snowmageddon in Michigan because it was just me and my wife. I think it was the first time they came down to meet him. I just so happened to have a game on the weekend, so yeah, that was the
That's
only
so
time.
funny.